Hey everyone, it's Nick Henning of Phoenix Gaming. Let's talk about the second half of prezcon. So, first of all, long story short, prezcon is very fun. It's a smaller convention. I'd say like some hundreds, maybe 500 people is probably too many, probably a couple hundred or something like that. I don't really know. But it's in like this one hotel, and it's pretty easy to sort of like walk across all the rooms and sort of see like what's firing off at any given time. It's a lot like WBC, and that I would describe it as kind of this like organized, organized open gaming that like you're going to play like XYZ games at XYZ times. And if you win, then you'll advance either to a semifinal or final, depending on how popular the event is. And the convention is large enough that like some significant number of events just advance people straight to the finals. And some significant number of events have a really awkward number of advancing people, like 6, which is pretty difficult to deal with. They have that at WBC too, but I found that awkward number amount was a little bit higher at prezcon than it was at WBC. So when I last updated, it was Tuesday, and then basically there's absolutely no way I'm going to remember everything because my mind is it is now Tuesday of the following week, and I'm still catching up on sleep just from waking up at 8 o'clock every day and going to bed at like 1:30 or 2 every day. So there's absolutely no way I'm going to remember all of the details, but it was competitively a killer week for me in terms of games that I ended up winning. And I got to play a lot of long games too, which was really fun because they're not as demanding on the schedule because the schedule is not quite as robust as WBC. But actually that worked out really favorably for how I wanted to consume this convention, which was a little bit more casually. I still was playing games just constantly, but it would mean that I'd have an hour or two block here or there where I didn't have anything going on, which would allow me to go and grab food. And the hotel is in Charlottesville. It's like really close to the airport, and there's a handful of different like restaurants around, like easy to eat at restaurants that I think really added to the experience. So definitely pretty sweet in that regard. And yeah, I would recommend if you're kind of semi-local to the area. A bunch of people like fly in or travel from really far away to come, but if you're into that, that's great. I don't know that I would pick prezcon first unless you knew people. It really added to my experience that I knew a lot of people at this convention from WBC and from WSBG. But all told, at the end of the week, I'd won 6 different events. Age of Innovation, let's see if I can remember all of them. Arnak, Scythe, Brass, which was really exciting. Oh boy. I'm going to have to go look at my plaques. I haven't stacked up here. Root, of course, Root. That was like one of the most fun games. And hold on. We'll find it. Root, Arnak. Oh, and of course, Great Western Trail New Zealand, which was also really fun. So let's talk about Great Western Trail New Zealand first, since it's the last one that I remembered. And in GWT New Zealand, which I think is really a wonderful expression of the Great Western Trail franchise, I, in both the semifinal and final game, played Shepherds, which is the cowboy strategy, which in a game where there's a lot of diverse things that you can do, is kind of one of the most boring strategies you can choose. But there was the building in both of those games. That's the level 2 building that is get $2 per shepherd you have and draw discard 3. It's kind of like the shuffler from the base game. And it is so insanely powerful. I was basically in both games able to hybrid that strategy with like getting bonus tiles or terrain tiles, hazards, that just exploded me in both of the games. And I won relatively comfortably in the second one, which was kind of a surprise. It didn't feel like that, but the cow market is just so much more friendly, or the sheep market is so much more friendly than it is in base game, that if you haven't played just like a really dedicated shepherd strategy, I would recommend trying it, especially with that one really crazy building in play, because it gives you so much cash and gives you just a lot of flexibility of things to do. The ability to buy the big cows and get a ×2 shuffler with them every time you buy one means that you just cycle through your deck faster. So in the finals, I actually bought a couple dogs in my deck, so my deliveries were great because I had the cows plus the certificates. Although strangely in the semifinals, my deliveries were even better, but that's because I really focused on opening the hand size early because the board was not quite as clogged. But I did a lot better in the final than I did in the semifinal, so duly noted there. There were a handful of games that I lost. I played in Raw. I won my first game just kind of by getting ahead early on, I think, just random points like gold and civilizations and stuff like that. And I just kind of kept that pace. It was really, really close by the end of the game. I think I only won by 1 point because a player who ended up being in second had some really monster pickups, but had miscounted how many points I had going to the final. So I knew I could be a little bit more conservative and win that game. But then I lost the semifinal pretty handily by being the person who was always sort of waiting to the end of the round. And then I was at the whim of the deck, which is no one's fault but my own. And so that ended up not going as well on the Raw side. I also lost Heat. We played a 7-player game of Heat in 70 minutes, which is the way that you make that game fun. But I was busy doing a lot of table captaining, so I did not pay attention to my strategy very much. And I didn't draft super well. So that did not go super well. I think I ended up in third in the Heat. A lot of good late night games, Tumbling Dice, which is like a little silly die chucker game. Not like Ameritrash die chucker, like literally chucking dice. The dexterity style game. I missed, unfortunately, the Bonanza evening, which is really fun. Can't Stop I played, and I actually got to the semifinals in that one, playing against the guy, a friend of mine, who got to the finals and then almost won, but had a bunch of busts in a row to end up getting overtaken by his opponents, which is the funniest story that I heard all week long. Root, I played actually, I guess I played 3 games. Because it must have been the Heat. No. I played the Heat game and we went straight to the final. But our final was a 5-player final. And I played the Otters. And I was especially salesperson-y, which was really fun. I got up in the lead pretty early, but then I just completely stalled out as people kind of slapped me around a little bit and would no longer buy anything from me, which is how Otters go. And so I sort of hung around in the lead for several turns in a row, scoring basically 2 to 3 points per turn, which I made sure everybody knew, which was true, but also I still remained in the lead points-wise during this whole time, and then made my final push to get to 27 points. The whole table collaborated to basically make it nearly impossible for me to win on my next turn, and then I top-decked a 2-point thing that I could build, which completely saved my game. And so I just barely limped across the finish line, which is almost exactly what happened to me in the WBC Root tournament, where I basically made my big push, got wiped out by my opponents, and then barely limp across the finish line with just enough time to win the game. It's pretty exciting, honestly. I've had some really, really fun Root games, and usually Root 5 player is terrible, but this was actually a very entertaining game with a lot of pushes and pulls across the players, super heavy on the militant side, and we were just like smacking each other. It was really fun, actually. What else did I say? Age of Innovation also ended up being a 5-player final, which was long. That was kind of the one downside of it, but it was really interesting. One of the players drafted Swamp as their first thing because it ended up being essentially the only color that was not color sandwiched, which was really, really prescient choice on their part, and I think helped them a lot. But nonetheless, they didn't expand aggressively enough, and so territory on the board kind of got sopped up. And so the gray player and I, playing as yellow, managed to basically, by the mid-game, lock up the fact that we were scoring 12 or 18 points for network, which was really nice for us. But that black player, the Swamp player, was doing some really powerful stuff with scoring the tracks in the game. I did what I would say was my wisest choice of the game, is that I really just focused on 2 tracks. Usually I'm spread out across them to get all the bonuses, but I only focused on 2 of them, which really did reward me because I didn't put as much effort into the tracks as the other players. I was putting a lot more effort into building the towns and scoring the points from doing things like that, which worked out really favorably. Some really good book management on my part also meant that I was firing off innovations. I got actually 3 innovations, called innovations, by the end of the game, which was really, really helpful. Points from tech tiles and all sorts of things like that. Another player, the red player, did something exciting with kind of like the very first turn, buying the innovation tile that gives a priest and 3 points every turn, which generated a lot of value for them, and they were ahead all game, but just really had no gas at the end of the game and nowhere to expand to because of that 5-player thing. So I ended up actually not even exactly seeing the end of the game because I needed to run off to the Everdell final, which I'll get to in a second. And a new player that I met very kindly essentially took my seat and played out the rest of my turns because it was very clear what I was going to do. I was just kind of like building things for points for the last turn, and all the players at the table were cool with it because we'd kind of run over technically our allotted time slot. Everdell, I don't remember my Heat game very much, but the final was super interesting. The guy who did end up going on to win had just the absolutely most busted start I've ever seen, with like courthouse and historian and shopkeeper and just like all the infrastructure stuff that makes you really strong, but was missing a whole bunch of the endgame scoring points that really kind of push their scoring over the top. I made a pretty risky play of Cemetery when we were at the bottom of the deck, thinking that we still had some purple cards left in the deck, and I would flip those up. And I read that correctly, but misread the ability of the table to draw cards. The player to my right used the forest location to pitch several cards from their hand and draw the rest of the deck, which did in fact actually include exactly what I needed to end up going and win the game. So if I don't make that play and I make some more conservative plays, I actually might have been able to win, or I definitely would have gotten closer. It was, yeah, it's hard to say. I really felt like I was pretty far behind, but I underestimated my position and overestimated how far I was behind, which might have made me lead to some different choices along the way. And yeah, it was a really good game nonetheless. I had a fun time trying to pull together. I mean, I had a historian, so I did get to draw a lot of cards, which generally is pretty good, and pitching the cards for points and everything like that. I had a bard, and I had the ability to do the Journey 5 at the end of the game, so that really helped out my game plan a lot. But the card draw was not super duper favorable to me. I did get a couple of the scoring things, but not quite as much as I really needed to complete like special events and things like that. And I think I ended up getting third because I tied with another player for second place, but they had more events than I did. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Brass was really fun. I played in a semifinal and a final. The semifinal was advanced top 2. I tied with my buddy Cliff playing Cotton. I was playing Cotton. Honestly, I thought after the Canal era that I was just going to win, because I had a pretty good Canal era for Cotton and things went totally fine for me in Rail. But I guess they went even better for him in Rail, as he managed to do really a whole lot of things, flip a lot of beer, place a lot of links. I placed a lot of links too and was doing all the Cotton stuff that I wanted to do. So I guess I only ended up placing 2 Cotton, but I placed a pottery, so I was able to do sort of the 3 big buildings in Rail, which I think is generally the target that you're going for. And I think we both scored something absurd, like 162 points. So that was a pretty spicy game. And since we advanced top 2, it wasn't heartbreaking that I lost to him on the tiebreaker. Our final game was a little bit more wacky, with like a lot of weird stuff happening at the beginning. He had tried to set up a play. The same player had tried to set up a play for someone else to build iron, but they had other problems and other kind of focuses that they were going for. So I ended up overbuilding his iron in Era 1, in the Canal era, which put him really far behind. And I didn't have much going for me in Canal era, except for the fact that I played a ton of iron, but then I was able to get a ton of links and take advantage of sort of the board state to get a bunch of extra rails that I maybe shouldn't have been able to get. I scored 72 points in rail links, which was enough to put me towards the victory for that, which was pretty exciting. What else did I say I played? Drawing a blank on which things I've already covered in this video. That's what I get for doing a recap on the spot. Oh, Arnak. We played Snake Temple Side for the final, and it was a really, really good final game, with some different kind of like pushing and pulling along the way. I think that I got a Prospector in this game, but I was kind of like last up the track. Like it was like it flipped up that way, but then I was first to claim the guys at the bridge that you have to pay the idol for, because I didn't do a lot of the exploring at the beginning. So I was a bit behind at the beginning, but in the mid game, because I hadn't used the idols for anything, I was able to sort of claim the first of those bridge guys, which gave me some additional flexibility. And I wasn't doing anything super duper powerful, but I was using my Prospector to fuel the Jeweler as my other assistant, which made it so that I wasn't kind of choked on resources and had some flexibility. I got to the top of the track first, and I only won by a couple points, which is the getting to the top of the track first, essentially. So that was a really good game. I really didn't get to do a lot of the compass stuff that I like to do, buying lots of artifacts and things like that. And I only did a few explorations. So I really was able to take advantage of monsters that had been left behind by other players to score a couple points that way, and then just do the fundamental research track stuff to end up winning by, I think, only 1 or 2 points at the end of the game. It was incredibly tight. Yeah, so that's kind of a brief run through of my week. I would definitely recommend prezcon. I'll probably look into going again in the future, depending on sort of work and time off of work, but it's pretty close to where I live. It's 3 hours away. And especially if I can kind of continue to do the share hotel room thing with people, or do the Airbnb thing, it really adds to the value of the event. So thanks for watching. I will get back to posting some regular videos pretty soon, and have a great day.